Okay, part 3. All right, so I don't know if I've done an inflammation video. I know I've talked about what inflammation is, and doctors are big fat liars about inflammation and what it is, and how we can fix it. But anyway, so you can have an inflammatory stroke. They go in, they go, oh, well, we realized you had no plaque in there. Well, it must have got pushed out while you had a stroke. Well, in your artery blood flow system, you can have what's called an inflammatory stroke, because the inflammation, the cells stop holding water, they stop holding food, and they stop holding oxygen. This is another reason besides the thyroid that you could be totally exhausted and not be able to get out of bed. And then the cells start to collapse and they stick together in the artery blood flow that comes from the heart. And then you can actually have a stroke, a non-plaque stroke, right? So say you're on one of these diets that eats a lot of meat. Paleo people like to eat a lot of meat, and Atkins, and well, meat is one of the highest acid intake products that causes inflammation in the body. Dairy, another high acid intake, and also nightshades, another high acid intake. And so you always have exhaustion. You age really rapidly. Inflammation is the root of all diseases and pain and fatigue, right? Because it's what starts it off. It's where the good cells, the healthy cells, become damaged early on. And so they're not carrying all of the oxygen, water, nutrient, and whatever else, good hormones, to the areas that need to receive them, and the cells that need to receive them through the blood supply. Also, if the liver and gallbladder are not cleaning everything properly, which means, your gallbladder and liver should dump in REM at night, and most people don't go into REM anymore because they have a smart meter, and the smart meter wakes them up right about REM cycle. And if you drink alcohol, you won't go into REM that night. And if you're taking other kinds of drugs to force sleep and pain relievers, then your body's not going to really go into REM either. So if body's not dumping the sludge, from the gallbladder and liver every night, then it starts to build up and starts to collect. And so this is another falsehood, that you have to have your, organs removed. You can regenerate your organs. Just because your organs stop for whatever reason, or get cranky or inflamed or whatever else, doesn't mean that they can't restart. The only time that you're going to have an organ that's going to need to be removed or it's highly damaged is if it has like gangrene, which is past the point of infection. And if you have gangrene in your body, you have a whole other mess of problems as well. All right, so inflammation is way different than what you're told. And they treat inflammation in medical system in different parts of the body. So if you have inflammatory, you have fluid, you're retaining a lot of fluid in your body, you're having edema or mild anaphylactic shock of some kind, then your body is producing a lot of, you're in a very big inflammatory situation because your body is swelling and it has fluid, and it very readily affects the heart. And the inflammatory or histamine production, has to be reduced. And so you have to figure out what the culprit is. Some kind of environmental issue, I'm sure, including food. Food is an environmental issue, right? The environment around you, right? And what you're processing and how you're processing it. And the other thing, too, is like you get about age 40 and your body no longer retains nutrient. So up until 40, your body will say, for example, your body you go through a period where you eat a lot of food, or somehow you take a lot of supplements and a lot of vitamin C. Your body will store that extra vitamin C in your adrenals, or in your liver will store excess B12 for emergencies, for, when stress hits, so your body can manage the stress. So after 40, you don't have reserves anymore. This is why if you hit about 40 and you start aging. 3 top nutrients that people should take is a biological magnesium. Mercola sells quite a bit of, Dr. Mercola sells quite a bit of good vitamins. So you need, definitely need a magnesium. Probably need to double the magnesium, because most people don't eat enough green leafy vegetables that come right from a garden, right? A lot of things have chemicals, and so you can't really rely on the diet. And B vitamins, which I always tell people you should really be getting injections. Here we have some, because B vitamin, unless you're growing your own food and you're not overly washing it, you're not getting bacteria-laced produce, and that bacteria is B vitamin. That's why I'm horrified when I go into a store and I'll see organic lettuce and it'll say washed 3 times. I'm like, so you washed every bit of microbial benefit, and which is a natural probiotic, and you washed every bit of potential B12 right off of it? Yeah. So, I mean, even the organic and alternative industries have zero idea. So you should take B12. I would get the injections. Here we have some weight loss clinics that do B12 injections, and also they do a multiple B vitamin with amino acid, which is really good in weight loss because of stress. So what does B12 do? It coats the nerves. So I think a man or electrician would understand this. I mean, you'd have all kinds of fires in your house if you didn't have coating around your electrical wires and they were sparking out everywhere. It's the same thing with our own electrical system, which is the nerve, the neurons creating the charge and going through the nerve endings to the different parts of the body as a communication relay. And so if they're not coated, then we're going to have all kinds of firing problems, right? All neurological, most everything that we're dealing with right now, all health problems or like neurological functions. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And then the number one most important nutrient is vitamin C. Mercola sells a liposomal vitamin C. That's a really good one. You can actually make them yourself with a jewelry cleaner and like an organic non-GM lichen, and then you get absorbic acid, and then you charge them together, and then they bind. So they bypass the stomach acids, and your tissues absorb it long. The liposomal vitamin processes way long before they hit the digestive tract. So you need a lot of vitamin C because all your organs are connective tissue, including your colon. People wonder why they have diverticulitis. Well, partially it's your diet. It's what's in your diet from the environment. But the other problem is that you have zero vitamin C, and so the connective tissue breaks down. So this is the deal. Dentists lie to you. They say, well, you have periodontal disease. Well, you don't have periodontal disease, my friend. You have vitamin C deficiency, and your gums are connective tissue, and your teeth are falling out because the connective tissue is breaking down. So when your gums start to break down, you have periodontal disease, supposedly. You have scurvy. You have the beginning stages of scurvy, which means that your tissues are breaking down. So people that get like diabetes and stuff, and they get sores, these sores process faster because their tissues are breaking down at a really high rate because their blood sugars are all over the map and they're not taking enough vitamin C. And so now they're starting to get the scurvy wounds and sores. And this is why they chop off your limbs, because you have no vitamin C. Now, if they were giving you like, some heavy vitamin C IV drips, it would cure the fast oncoming scurvy because you were deficient to start off with. And it's probably why you're going to have kidney failure. And it's not kidney failure, it's just temporarily. And they're going to take out perfectly good kidneys because they stopped working. Well, maybe because the connective tissue and the kidney can't pump, right? Because you have no vitamin C, and so those connective tissues are breaking down, so the pump breaks down. It doesn't mean that you can't regenerate it to a certain extent. It's just they lie to you. And they are committing huge acts of fraud, the medical system, all of them. You can't trust any of them. Okay, so much for that tangent. Okay, let's talk about tension. Tension ultimately is going to lead to inflammatory disease. The tension in the body, tension in the muscles, the tension in the bones, the tension in the jaw, the tension in the head, wrinkles, your ears not draining, losing your eyesight, sinuses not draining, having lots of sinuses infections, having lots of headaches and migraines, having a lot of weight in the gut, pain in the knees and the joints. All of this stuff is tension. Tension precedes dis-ease because it is dis-ease. You have, you're not at ease. You're in chronic fatigue. And so tension means that these diaphragms, right, your chakras that are the energy component, that are kind of the little batteries for each diaphragm in the body so that these diaphragms can open and close. But then we had orthodontics, and it closed down the whole 3 diaphragms in our head. And you're going to have a lot of tension and stress in those areas, and it's going to degenerate. So what happens is, like, when you have tension areas, the muscle starts to strangle the bone, and the muscle can break the bone, and it also can dislocate the bone. So say, for example, you are chronically doing some kind of activity with your shoulder, then your shoulder starts to hurt. It doesn't seem like it's in the right place, but it's overdeveloped muscle. So it's been overdeveloped in the wrong place. It's pinching off the nerve that's coming out of the shoulder blade. Then you start to have elbow pain, tennis elbow, which is related to what's going on in the shoulder, because it doesn't have a relationship to the brain anymore, because the muscle tension, whether it's from you being beat up, yanked around as a child, dropped as a baby. The big one is birth trauma. Really freaks me out. Totally freaks me out what they're doing in hospitals to babies. Totally just blows my mind off that they would give, a woman pectin as soon as they give you an IV, and it starts to force labor to come on faster, which is basically beating your uterus is beating the baby's head in, equivalent to being hit over the head with a baseball bat over and over and over again. That is going to cause all kinds of tension in that baby. And then that baby's going to develop its bones and tissues around the tension. And so the tension has a stranglehold and will cause, diseases over the period of that life, because the whole spine, I'm seeing babies that have a 50-year-old man hard labor spine after being born, right? So that baby's brain is not communicating actively with any of the nerve passages that are going to the organs. So the baby is not regenerating. Is it growing and developing? Yeah, but it's growing and developing in a way where it's going to have all kinds of health problems, if not brain damage. So you can have a lot of tension in your hips because, you've had some trauma, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual trauma. And spiritual trauma has a lot to do sometimes with religion, has a lot to do with, there's some satanic stuff. There's a lot of possession these days. There's a lot of, you're given drugs and then, you become possessed by spirits. It's just how it happens. A lot of these drugs block the neurotransmitters and you become a boogie hotel, just how it is. A lot of places, because of all the energies that have been going on for so long, on top of all the murder of the native people, especially in the Americas, it's compounding. And now you have lots of areas and homes and places that have multiple levels of spiritual warfare. That is horrific. And I feel so bad for these kind of people. I help deal with these kinds of issues as well. Gosh, I just, there's so much. So, for example, you have a lot of tension in an area, especially your hips. Everybody has a lot of tension in their hips and they're always off. So there's going to be a mental, emotional, physical, or spiritual reason for that. It could have been childhood birth all the way up. I mean, that's, as a traditional osteopath, that's the way that we work. We work from where the person's at now and take them back through the birth trauma in an active way to restore everything. And there are not many of me left, right? I'm an anomaly. The type of work that I do is an anomaly. I tell people in the U.S. that I'm a rarity. If you find me and meet me and get to work with me, especially when I work on you with hands-on, you're not going to find other people who have these thought processes and have the ability to actually physically work on you and spiritually work on you and correct whatever needs to be healed. So basically what I do is I work through the timeline and I bring up and heal whatever didn't get healed the first time. Okay. So when you have tension, say you have tension in your hip, you've got a sciatic, nerve issue starting to, sometimes people don't really know that their hips have been out for 25 years. And they try to do all kinds of things like stretching and all this other stuff. And yeah, is that band-aiding it? It is. But there'll become a point where it'll push the envelope into an arena that they can't manage. They don't have the tools to manage. And also, the medical personnel is not going to be able to help you because they don't know how it works. You can't fix something if you don't know how it works. So you can have a hip out and, for example, have a lot of tension in your legs. And then what happens is that, you're walking down the road and you step off a curb and you compound fracture or you hairline fracture your tibia and fibula in your lower leg. It's because there was so much tension in the tissue that finally the tissue you stepped on it in a way that the tissue actually pulled the bone and broke it. I see it all the time with people in their shoulders. They'll have their, elbow pop out, or one of their, bones in their lower parts of their arm, or, you'll start to see it where they can't grasp things, with their fingers here, because these bones have all kind of been popped out, and this bone is headed for popping out. So the thing is like, it's unbelievable, like how they treat people. Well, let's, cut that open and, cut those tendons and ligaments, like you don't need them anyway, right? Let's explore. Let's do exploratory surgery. Okay, well, if you're going to explore something, you would go to Mars, right? You're like, never been there. I'm exploring. You keep doing surgery on one body and after another, and you still call it exploratory surgery, you're a criminal. There's nothing left to explore. Maybe like how to fix it properly with manual intervention, right? Get in there and get your fingers in there and feel around and see how it works, right? Fix it, release it. And sometimes, you have to release a lot of spiritual trauma in people first, right? So this is a process. You work on people as a process. You open up one area, then, they have stuff come up, and then you have to like help them mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. You have to help them work through it. Then you can release another part. But there's layers and layers and layers. And so be careful about these trends I see coming with these doctors and diets and nutrition and all of this bullshit. And it's so hard for me because I warn people. People will come to me and I'll talk to them and they'll be like, well, I've never heard that from anybody else. Then they'll go ahead and make a decision to have a surgery that they can't turn back on. And then they want to call me and cry on my shoulder. And I'm like, I gave you the information that you needed, and you chose to make a decision to damage yourself. So you need to find somebody that can help you work with your archetypal personalities. Like maybe you've got a saboteur, right? Maybe you're afraid of authority. You got all these issues that are helping to guide your choices to have your bodies, maimed and harmed. And I'm not saying the alternative is good either. Some of these exercise places are so extreme. And I know this, right? Because back in the day, when I felt like I was at the top of my game in my early 30s. I was running. I was going to be competing in triathlons. I was swimming. I was a hardcore climber. Loved to climb. I still love to climb. I got to lose a little bit more weight, so I can hold onto the rock. Because the boobs and the belly are just a little too big. They push me off, so I fall off. And the thing is, like, I feel healthier than I ever have in my entire life. And I don't regret for one moment, the journey from having brain cancer to where I'm at now and healing it completely 100% alternatively and making sure that I manage that whole process, right? I went through all the steps, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, all the things that had, created it. But I was eating what I call a lot of pharmaceutical food, protein bars, taking a lot of supplements, protein drinks, and all this other stuff. Plus, I had a private practice where, I was flying under the radar as a body worker. But, I did a lot of shamanism work on people, regardless if they knew I was doing the work on them or not, and help them to heal. So I got really well known for working with people who had cancer. Most of my patients ended up going into remission. And it was just more of a guiding. Now I'm more direct. I'm out of the box, been out of the box for a while, and I'm super direct. So, but I realized like my brain cancer, came because I was putting too much athletic stress on my body. I wasn't eating food, touching the ground and growing in the ground that had direct sunlight in it. I wasn't drinking proper water. Now I only drink well water. Like I'll even drive to people's houses I know just to fill up my little containers with well water so me and my dog can drink well water because I'm not drinking anything else. And then sometimes I charge it in glass to get the sunlight back into it. So going back to, all this led me back to the land, led me back to the soil, and led me back to soil restoration and nutrition and compost and understanding our bodies also as a composter, except for we don't have enough microbes in the body to do the composting work. So they're breaking us apart and degenerating us. They're eating us alive because they're breaking us down because we're never introducing new microbes into our system. So the microbes don't have the positive and the negative microbes that know what to do with stuff. We just have the negative ones that are breaking things down. And we're breaking down at such a rapid pace. We don't have the proper microbes to build us up, to take what's broken down and rebuild it up. And so people would call those like probiotics and stuff like that. But they have to be from a living source. You're not going to get a probiotic in a powder. Now, kombucha works really effectively. It's better if you have a relationship with the mushroom, right? And you talk to it and it helps you because it knows the direction that your body needs to go in and it knows what to produce. So, I've been through this whole thing. I was in alternative medicine practice when I got brain cancer. And it was probably a really hard time for 5 years. Like I had so much physical pain that I would just spend days at a toilet vomiting. And I just refused anything that Western medicine had. And I had to claw my way back to health. And so, some of this athletic stuff and exercise is just way too extreme. If you are building way too much muscle mass, that's scar tissue. Each time you tear those muscles, you're creating scar tissue, which is creating tension in those areas. And it's scarring the muscle in a way that it's going to hold the bone in a way, and it may be an improper place for that bone to be held. Now, is there a middle of the road? There's a middle of the road. There's, getting out and hiking in nature, right? And getting out and exercising outside is way harder than exercising in any gym. Because it takes motivating ourselves. But while we're out there, maybe we should pay attention to what's going on in our environment because whatever is there is making us sick. It's contributing. So if you're not out there looking, you're not going to see what's going on. Walk along the river. You're like, wow, look at them dumping all that sewage into the river. That's interesting. Never saw that before. Oh, then you start researching and finding that they dump all these urine and poop that has all these drugs, including, anti-blood clotting drugs like Coumadin, which is rat poison. And, you're wondering, maybe why you're bruising so much, even though you're not taking any of the stuff. Well, they refilter that water back in at some point. At some point, that water gets refiltered back in and it hasn't been cleaned up or processed. And then, think about it. Reclamated water is that they don't even filter it or clean it. They just sterilize it the best they can, and they re-put it into the public water system. So guess what? Everyone's taking all those millions of people's drugs, hormones, chemo drugs, Coumadin, antipsychotic medications, whatever. You can't even imagine what you're on that you didn't think that you were on, right? So be careful with what I call the Jesus Christ Savior. People will call me and they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm in this pyramid and, there's all these, great supplements. They're changing people's life. Well, yeah, you take somebody who eats, McDonald's 3 times a day and you give them a little nutrient. You don't think that they're going to have major changes? Duh. Right? But these are savior things, right? And I grew up Pentecost with my grandmother, who was a legitimate real prophet. She was a prophet before Pentecost, but she hid in Pentecost to protect us, the family, from mean and awful people who wanted to kill us and harm us because of our bloodline genetic abilities. And she also did exorcisms, which is a video that I'm going to do here in the near future once I feel like I'm ready, about her and her ending in this world, which I think is a really important video to talk about, but I have to get myself straight with a lot of it. So yeah, saw a lot of, anyway, the thing is like there are so many environmental things that are happening to us that we couldn't even wrap our heads around that are contributing. So a trend, a supplement, be careful. We like being saved. We like having some kind of savior, like a quick fix to the responsibility that we need to undergo and take as a part of our process of awakening. And is it deep? Oh yeah. Once you go down the health rabbit hole all the way, you just couldn't even believe how bizarre what people believe in healthcare, what people believe in health and all these other things are. You just shake your head at like how bizarre the whole thing is. So made up, so ludicrous, so fake, and so unbelievably so. So if people out there are interested, you can contact me on my website, coe-llc.com, and you can set up an appointment with me. And I do appointments by Zoom meeting. And no, I do not tape them or anything else. You are required to take notes, and you are required to, take in the information and, move along with your health. And so everybody's different on whatever end they're dealing with on their healthcare, whether it's a spiritual side, it's a mental side, it's the physical side, or it's the emotional side. And everybody starts somewhere with me. And we have to determine that together where we're going to head. But a lot of times it's just an education scenario in the beginning. And I love listening to people, and I love to help them with the terms and the language that's being used that they may not understand, and how to simplify it so that they can, grasp their diagnosis and figure out what's the best course of action, and maybe give them, like a nutritional course of action or a spiritual course of action or something like that. So please be careful to not get stuck in these really big trends, and also, especially in health, and also be very aware of what's coming. I saw it this morning on the Today Show, and we really have to avoid this, because there are no quick fixes, and we're all have so many things that have happened to us during a lifetime. I mean, think about the babies that have been being born in the last 7 years, where the mother is given an IV of Pitocin, and it activates the uterus to contract so wildly that it's damaging this baby who has soft bones and tissue in their brain. I pick up these babies, and it's hard, I see these babies, and I try to explain to their parents like what's going on, and it's so hard. It's almost like there are days where I feel like I don't think I could work on another baby because of, how I see their spine and what's happened to them. And it's hard to have emotional composure and be able to, work at the highest level here for the the little guy, and just, and then the mother will get pregnant again. I mean, even though she has like a, hospital horror story of what's happened to her, it's like, do you have amnesia? And then you get pregnant again, and you're going to go through the same process again so that you can have another damaged baby? Maybe less damaged, maybe more damaged, like horrific. And once you go through something like that, like I always hear these horror stories about these women that end up in these hospitals to have babies, and then they're just so shocked at what happens. And then it's like, are you stupid? Because then they'll take them back into these doctors and let them inject them with stuff, or let them experiment on them, and so they can go on a trip somewhere. A baby should never be in an airplane because of the radiation levels. And this is the deal. There's so much radiation in the air right now. There are people that have done videos with radiation detectors like over the Midwest right now in airplanes where it's like 1,400 CPMs. 100 is emergency, right? And the average flying in an airplane is 100 CPMs for that duration. And babies and small children are the most susceptible to radiation, right? Sometimes, I can't figure out if I'm angry at the medical and the scientific people, if I'm angrier at them, or I'm angrier at the stupid people who are doing what they're doing to their children. Sometimes it's just really hard to stay in private practice. And as soon as I have land to work on, that's going to be the end of that. I'm not going to be able to do private practice anymore. Because I'm not really sure I can deal with any more people who are just not open-minded enough to actually find real solutions to their real problems. Anyway, that's it. It's going to kick me off again. Anyway, thanks so much for listening. And, you are the chooser. You have the choice. What you do goes. And don't be afraid. And yeah, are they going to come up against you sometimes? Hell yeah, they're going to come up against you because you're not in the herd mentality. You're not going to just accept what they're dishing out. And sometimes it's harder to take a stand. But the thing is, one day when you're laying on your deathbed, you're going to say, God, I wish I wasn't a coward. You want to leave here with your integrity intact, right? That you explored every avenue, that you educated yourself in a way that, you made the right choices along the way for your heart inside you. And that's what's going to matter at the end of the day. It's how you leave this world. And the choices that you make along the way. All right. Excuse me, I'm itchy. Bridget Lynn Dolgoff, Conscious of Economics and Urban Farm Project. And I hope some of that was enlightening because, I just don't really know how else to communicate to people about their health and the environment and everything. All right. Thanks so much. Good day.